Hello everyone, welcome back to Sportsbook Review's coverage of Euro 2020. I'm your host Martin Green. I've got George Gamble and Matt Lawrence, superstar handicappers extraordinaire, alongside me to preview the action today. We are focused on one specific group, that is Group D, and we've got Czech Republic in the lead on 4 points with a slightly better goal difference than England, who also have 4 points. Then we've got Croatia and Scotland bringing up the rear on 1 point each. So this group is delicately poised, and it's really interesting because the winner has to play a team from the group that also contains France, Portugal and Germany, whereas the runner-up seems like it could have an easier time of it in the next round. So there's a lot of different dynamics at play here. And it was a really, really underwhelming performance, I thought, from England last time out. George, as an England fan, what did you make of that performance against Scotland? I was very unimpressed.
Yeah, in complete agreement. Very unimpressed myself. It was tough to watch at times, and I feel like Scotland, if anything, had the better of the chances. Obviously, I'll go on to it shortly, but Czech Republic's assistant manager even said, they're not looking too much into it. It was a kind of derby game, and yes, all right, it was a derby game, but we should be beating the likes of Scotland. That's not me kind of getting sort of arrogant and thinking we're just better than them and we should be winning any game that we go into. But just the players we've got on show, the build up to this whole competition, the way that Scotland have performed so far in terms of struggling to score, and I felt that was the game to take the initiative and and really sort of put a beating on them, as it were, in terms of getting some good form going into the knockout rounds. And yeah, it was really disappointing. I think everything from, it's very well documented about people's opinions on Gareth Southgate's team selection. I just think there were some very questionable decisions in there. And okay, maybe you can put it down to he's just sort of thinking about the games ahead and in terms of this game against Scotland. But, taking Phil Foden off, for me, yes, I might be biased as a City fan, but I just felt like, he can create something out of nothing, and we needed some creativity. And he's recently come out and said, with Jadon Sancho, he doesn't want to sort of bring him in too much. He just doesn't want to throw him in at the deep end as he's not got a lot of tournament experience. I think it's ludicrous. He's performed for Dortmund. He performed in finals for Dortmund domestically. Could you imagine if Norway had got to somewhere and they said, no, we're not going to bring Haaland on. We don't want to throw him in. It's you play your best players. And I feel like we were screaming for someone like Jadon Sancho. And so the managerial sorts of decisions were a bit questionable, but yeah, I was extremely disappointed, and it can't get any worse, in my opinion, against the Czech Republic. So there needs to be a huge turnaround.
Yeah, well, it certainly made a mockery of England's status as the second favourites to win the tournament, joint favourites with some of the sportsbooks going into proceedings. They've now plummeted. They're fifth in the betting now, below Italy, Germany and Belgium, which perhaps is a fair reflection after seeing that performance. Bit of an up and down weekend, though. There were quite a few big teams, Matt, that let a few people down. I had France. I thought they could get the job done. Spain, I'm surprised to see that Spain couldn't win their game against Poland. What do you think is causing some of these dynamics? Do you just think it's plucky underdogs that are really fighting for their lives? How have you found it?
I think it's just tournament football, really. Just that unknown, really. And when you look at Spain and England, I think that both teams on their days are a much better sides than Scotland and Poland. And yeah, that was kind of like a big brother, little brother match right there in Scotland and England. And it was a bore. The whole match, really just stunk. And Scotland did have the better of the chances. George pointed that out right. They really did. They could have won that match and grabbed all three. So we have so many different permutations here in this final leg here. So it's going to be fantastic. This is kind of the group of life right now, and really it's anyone's ball game. And we're going to talk about storylines because if England do finish second here, I mean, it does give them a better route. And then you could almost say that that fifth place now to win it in fifth favorites would probably be an overreaction if they were to get in that second spot, because the route is just, it's incredibly more forgiving. And and I think that England right now, they have so many selection dilemmas. That's the problem. So Southgate's come out and said, Kane, you're leading the line. There's no doubt about that. But where else is there? I mean, I've seen some comments from Wayne Rooney about Foden and how he's only played in a Guardiola side, and can he adapt to this kind of tournament football, which I think it's a little bit ridiculous, kind of those comments. But at the same time, he might have a point too. And I would like to see them play with a couple of wingers. I mean, they've got everything at their disposal, and they just don't seem to pick out the right lineup. I mean, I would be looking at 4-3-3. Southgate wants to keep it a little bit more solid with the two holding midfielders, and it's boring. It's boring. Like, go out and have a go at it. So that's just where I see it. So many different criticisms, but I'm ready to break these matches down with you, and I'm excited as always.
Okay, thanks, Matt. Yeah, 37 goals in just 8 qualification games for England, and it came with that, exactly like you said, 4-3-3 with wingers, Sancho and Sterling either side of Kane. England just looked unstoppable. Suddenly, a lot slower players that are just playing a different brand of football, 2 holding midfielders, fullbacks sitting deep, and it doesn't seem to be working. Hopefully we see some changes for the game coming up. Just for London update in the comments, we've previewed every game of the Euros. So if you just head over to the SBR YouTube channel, click on one of the previous videos, you'll see all of our picks for the games that are taking place today. But thank you all for joining us here. Before we start analysing these matches, just your daily reminder to tap that thumbs up button, show a bit of love for Matt, show a bit of love for George. Subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell. That way you will be informed every time we're about to start previewing the Euro games, or anytime we're about to film basketball, NBA, all the different sports, all the different leagues that we cover here. Head on over to sportsbookreview.com for in-depth analysis, picks, all sorts of free content there. Thank you very much. Okay, we're starting off with Croatia versus Scotland in Glasgow at Hampden Park. There'll probably be a pretty boisterous atmosphere there. I have to say the Scottish fans have really done themselves proud during this tournament so far. It's a really big game for both teams, obviously. They both sit bottom of the group. Defeat would see either one of them eliminated. So, a draw isn't particularly great for them either. It would just leave them on 2 points, so they'd be crashing out. They're both going to have to take some risks in this game in a bid to try to win it. George, how do you see this one panning out?
Yeah, just as you've kind of said there, obviously a draw is not good enough for either of these sides. They need to go for the win. The Tartan Army, as they're affectionately called. I have to say I love that nickname. But they've played really well, in my opinion, in both of their games, and they've been somewhat unlucky. They've not managed to pick up a win yet. Obviously, they haven't scored either. Again, very much unfortunately. But on the other side, Croatia, they've really disappointed me, and they've had to rely on Ivan Perisic scoring a fantastic equaliser to spare their blushes against Czech Republic, who were very organised, I thought, and looked very threatening themselves. But I was looking a bit deeper into Croatia, and fans aren't happy with the manager Dalic, and it's definitely hard to believe that this side can play any worse than they have so far. Surely they can't put even worse performances than what they already have, and they are favourites for this one. They're priced up at plus 125 at the time of writing, and I can't help but feel it's just due to Scotland being considered the minnows, obviously, of this group, and Croatia being one of the former sort of strong footballing nations and should just have the far superior quality. The disparity between the prices, I thought, was a little bit too much, and they've won just 2 games in their last 11 now, and that was at home to Malta and Cyprus. Again, sides that you should be beating. They are minnows. They've also failed to score in their last 3 away matches, losing them all by 1-0 scoreline. So they do tend to be quite low scoring and quite tight. They've registered just 1.61 expected goals across their opening 2 games of the tournament, which just is awful. You should be easily getting that in just 1 game, if not more. Across 2 games, dreadful. And they've got an expected goals against of 3.13. So they concede a lot of chances in comparison to the chances that they create themselves. And like I said, the odds that they're at between sort of plus 120 and plus 125. When the odds are, around plus 120, the expected chance of winning is around 45%. But you go back and they've only won 34% of those matches when they're at those odds recently as well. So I am kind of leaning towards Scotland. And as I was sort of looking further into them, they've never lost to Croatia in the 5 meetings that they've had. They are outsiders. As I said, they're priced up at plus 220 to go out and get the win. And yes, they're yet to score a goal at this Euros, and that's something that urgently needs to be addressed. But their expected goals over the 2 games, 3.03, suggest that it will even out. And I think they get on the score sheet here. I do think they'll score against this Croatia side who look very... I think the age is sort of coming into play. I mentioned it earlier in another podcast for SBR about how I was worrying that their ageing squad will struggle against England's pace and against England's threats going forward. And I think that's also shown against the Czech Republic. Anyone with a bit of pace or a bit of energy just causes Croatia problems. And Scotland have got that in abundance, as we saw against England. Yes, Billy Gilmour, as obviously it's come out today, is going to be missing through COVID. But, he didn't make an appearance in the first game against the Czech Republic, but he played against England. And I thought he was fantastic in the middle of that park. Just 20 years of age, and he was brilliant. But they've got quite a few other players full of energy, who are dynamic, want to get forward. John McGinn is probably my favourite Scottish player. Absolutely love him. He's just a midfield engine, box to box. And I think Croatia might struggle to contain them. And I think Scotland will create a lot of chances. And the momentum does seem to be with them. So, and they couldn't have picked a better opponent to need to get a win against, in my opinion. Croatia aren't the team of old. Scotland need to get that win. I think Croatia are the perfect opponent for them to play to try and get that. So, Croatia have got a lot of cracks in their side, and I think Scotland are more likely to exploit that than the other way around. So my favourite pick on this one was for Scotland double chance and under 3.5 goals. I've gone with the unders because whilst I do think there will be chances, both of these sides have got a habit of not taking them. They don't take their chances. And, with Scotland, I think getting that first goal, not just in this game, but of the tournament, is going to be crucial. And getting that first one is always the most difficult. I think this is a tense affair, and I think it goes one way or the other. I don't see this being a draw. But yeah, for me, whilst teams need goals to win the game, I don't see there being that many. I think this is won by a tight margin. So for me, I've gone Scotland double chance and under 3.5 goals at plus 120. And that was on William Hill or Unibet, but the odds are dropping on that as well. So obviously, if you want to get on that, I'd get on soon. And I think it was shortened still. But yeah, so that was my thoughts on that one.
Okay, thank you, George. Yeah, on the surface, it doesn't look like a particularly high-scoring game. I mean, Scotland haven't scored yet in 2 games at the tournament. Croatia have only scored once and haven't really created much. Neither team has an out-and-out goal scorer up front. Che Adams is okay, but he's not exactly like a focal point in the Southampton attack. And it seems like Rebic plays more as a false 9 up front for Croatia. I do think him and Perisic are dangerous. I think they can create chances in this game. I'm also expecting a very tight clash. I have to admit, I've gone for Croatia to win it, and I got plus 138 yesterday. It's now gone down to plus 125. I believe that's because Gilmour's going to be out. He was obviously a very good player against England, and he will be missed in that midfield. Croatia are certainly diminished compared to the team that we saw finish runners-up at the World Cup. But I still just go back to Modric and Kovacic in midfield. These are quality players, 2 of the best midfielders in world football, even if Modric has waned a little bit in recent years. I think they like playing in tight spaces, and they have just enough craft and guile for me to unlock this Scotland defence. It was a heroic effort from Scotland at Wembley. They played really, really well, but I'm not sure how much energy they're going to have exerted and if they could be a little bit fatigued in this game, perhaps. A lot depends on Kieran Tierney's calf. But I just think eventually Croatia have to spring to life, and I can actually see an away win for Croatia in this game. But Matt, what are you going for?
So I think that at first glance, I sided with Croatia and the under 3.5, really just kind of looking at it as when you look at the stats, they back up at unders here. I mean, both teams like you guys have kind of pointed out, they really do struggle to find and slot, the ball into the back of the net. But when I started digging in more and more a bit, I think that it's just both of these teams have to go so gung-ho here, and they have to give it everything and to try and score goals, to where I just kind of flipped it around a little bit. And I think that both teams to score at -110 is probably the best look here, because both of these defenses are, well, let's say, I mean, when you look at the center back partnerships really of both nations, they're not strong. I mean, Vida and Lovren are more than gettable. If Shea Adams can just take his time a little bit more in the box area, like he should be able to find one. They're going to create plenty of chances from the outside with Robertson's crosses into the box. But this one really does come down to a midfield battle. It's kind of the old guard versus the new guard, really, when you're looking at, Modric. I mean, will this be his last tournament for Croatia? We'll see. But, him and Kovacic and versus, like you guys touched on, McGinn. Gilmore missing is a big miss for me. I mean, I think that I don't know why he was really even absent in the first match. I think that he should be a part of their best 11. So I just see that both of these teams have got to go all in here. I mean, so I think that there is going to be, chaos really. And when you're looking at Scott McTominay having to play center half here, I mean, that is not his natural position by any means. They did okay against England. It's one of those where it's really hard to pinpoint why they were able to be so resolute really against England. But let's just hopefully chuck that into kind of being like a derby atmosphere there at Wembley. But this is both of these teams. I mean, Croatia's got to go all in. I think that we could see some goals here. So both teams to score for me, and I do lean Croatia, which they're down now over here, and the States at +115. So money is coming in on Croatia, that's for sure.
Yeah, well, I think they almost played with a back five against England, because O'Donnell and Robertson, the fullbacks, were so deep at times. It was just a blue wall that England just couldn't find a way to get through. I guess they will have to display a bit more ambition in this game, because, as we've said, a 0-0 draw is no good for them. Yeah, I also put it down to a midfield battle, and I had McGregor, McGinn and Gilmore up against Kovacic and Modric, and perhaps Brozovic, if you want an extra body in there, take off one of the forwards. And I just went with Croatia. But should be a fascinating game. Looking forward to seeing how it unfolds. Our next one, Czech Republic versus England. Big game, big game. These two were actually in the same qualification group. England thumped the Czech Republic 5-0. Raheem Sterling scored a hat-trick in that one. But then in Prague, Czech Republic won 2-1. It was England's only defeat in qualifying. They still comfortably finished top of the group. As previously mentioned, 37 goals in 8 games. And it was largely down to Sterling, Sancho, Kane just being absolutely dynamite up front. Not quite sure what we're going to get in this game. The thing that's just so bizarre about it is that it's kind of in England's interest to finish second, isn't it? I mean, if they finish second, they're coming up against, I don't know, a much easier team on paper than it's going to probably be either Germany, France or Portugal in the next round if they win the group. So are they going to try to lose it? Would you actually think that they're going to throw this game? Can't be really, because the public is crying out for a big, strong performance from England. Gareth Southgate's under a lot of pressure over here. The media are really on his back. The fans are on his back. It's set up to be a very exciting game. Matt, what are you going for in this one?
So kind of like what I touched on at the beginning is that Southgate came out and, basically said, Kane, you're the first one on my team sheet. He hasn't scored yet. He was the favorite to win the Golden Boot before the tournament. So I think that we do expect a reaction, and I'm hoping for some squad rotation a bit. I mean, I know that this is the third and final match, but I want him to tinker just a tad bit to see if, when it comes down to the knockout stages, maybe there is a better plan B, because I don't like what plan A is right now. I don't. I think that there's a lot of different formations tactically that Southgate could employ here. And I mean, when you look at the odds, they look fantastic on England. If you give England at -160 roughly to win this game against Czech Republic, I think before the tournament started, you would probably gobble that up. And it's just now it's kind of getting down to these storylines and who do they want to face and how does this happen? Well, I think that we can expect a reaction from England. I don't think that they're going to just try and sit here and take a point against the Czech Republic. I think that would be brutal. I mean, it'd just be a little bit unprofessional, in my opinion. But yeah, so I've gone with Kane at 2.45 to score any time here, and I've gone with England and under 4.5 goals here because these two teams have met multiple times. They know each other a bit, so I'm sure that Czech are gonna, they're gonna come in here and try to keep a point and play for a point here and keep it as tight as possible. But I just hope that England can break through here and then stay fairly resolute at the back. And I just see England getting the job done here, and we'll see who they play in the round of 16. Maybe it's Germany, maybe it's France, maybe it's Portugal. Really, that one is completely wide open still as well. So I think you just go out, you grab your 3 points, and whoever you play because you're going to have to play them at some point in the competition regardless. So that's the way that I would approach it.
Well, indeed, if you're going to win this tournament, you have to beat teams like France, Portugal and Germany. Ideally, as an England fan, I'd rather face them later in the tournament, but that's just sometimes the way it goes. I do think it's important for England to have a bit of momentum. It would be great to go into the knockout stages having comfortably dispatched the Czech Republic. They are a very good team. It's a very high price you got on Kane there. At the start of the tournament, he was the favourite to finish as top goal scorer, but he's kind of looked very lethargic in the first 2 matches. I guess he's not 100% fit, but sounds like he's going to be starting. He's the captain, so you have to have him up front. The real question for me, George, is who's going to play alongside him? Are we going to see Grealish? Is Foden going to start? When is Sancho going to come into the team? Is he going to keep faith with Sterling? What sort of starting 11 do you expect from Southgate in this game?
I'm expecting changes, definitely. I mean, like I said and alluded to earlier, I don't get the whole decision with Sancho when he came out and said he doesn't want to throw him in at the deep end. It baffles me. Sancho's one of our best wingers, one of my most creative players on that right hand side. And I feel like if we'd have started him, someone like Phil Foden would have benefited much more because he'd have had a player on the same wavelength as him. As Wayne Rooney alluded to, obviously, that Matt was speaking about earlier, he was saying he makes these quick pop little passes, expecting it back straight away in tiny pockets, tiny spaces, and then the other player gets the ball and then just passes it straight back out to a full-back, back into the centre halves, and you start again in the whole system. It goes over and over and over again. But yeah, going back to it, I think there will be a host of changes in this one. I do get the feeling Sterling may start up alongside Kane again. I'm hoping, it's as Matt said, I hope we do go back to a 4-3-3, but Gareth Southgate's very stuck in his ways, and I can see Declan Rice holding that, maybe with Calvin Phillips still in there, just to hold that midfield, have that anchor, if you like, and then make changes around them. That's kind of the way I see it panning out personally. But yeah, the permutations are really weird in this group, and I don't want to think that teams will happily just play out for a draw because it suits the both of them. It is a tricky one. So, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me to see another drab display from England. It just wouldn't. I mean, you kind of look, their last 3 games at Wembley, they've won by a scoreline of 1-0. There's just been a single goal in that game. And before the game against Scotland, England actually got on the score sheet in 7 straight games. So, they know where the goal is, but it just seems to be we want to change things when it's working. When we were playing that 4-3-3, scoring goals for fun, don't fix what isn't broken, in my opinion. Play your best football and take it to other teams. But we seem to be very reactive to other teams in terms of what we think they're going to bring, rather than trying to play our best game. So looking at sorry, I'm going to say something.
We went into the tournament, didn't we, as like one of the most exciting attacking teams in the world. Scored, as I say, I keep repeating it, but 37 goals in 8 qualification games with dynamic wingers either side of Kane. It's almost like we've got too many options, and he's been sort of confused by the choice, with Grealish and Mount all playing really well this season and Foden coming into proceedings. They're all very good players, but they're not quite as direct as Sterling and Sancho and even Bukayo Saka. Seems like we need a bit of an interesting dynamic where you've got some creative players, but also players that are quick and direct and prepared to run past the last man.
Yeah, it's baffling, I have to be honest, but I wonder whether it comes down to mentality on Southgate's part, in that now we're in a major tournament after we got very far, obviously in the last World Cup, getting to the semis, and now we're in a tournament game. Is it more of a case of, I need to keep things tight, I just want to see if we can get through, or want to get as far as we can, rather than playing our football? It will leave us too open, not taking risks, wanting to be very conservative and relatively risk free. I do wonder if that kind of plays a part. And like I said, a lot could be read into the game with Scotland. I do feel like you can't put too much on it, though. But yeah, I mean, the pick that I was going for, because again, I think England win this personally. When the odds, similar to before, when the odds are minus 175, the expected chance of winning is at 64%. And England have actually won 84% of matches when they're at those odds or similar. So, they do well. I've gone with the England or draw and under 2.5 match goals, simply because, yes, I think England win. But if it is another drab display where it gets us, say the last half an hour and there's not been a goal scored, and you sort of think, well, a draw is not the end of it. We just want to make sure we're all right for the next round. Don't want to get any injuries and that kind of thing. And then the game peters out. So I don't think the Czechs win this game. They've got obviously a horrendous record at Wembley. And again, I just don't see there being too many goals in this game. If anything, I'd love to be wrong. Partly, and I'd love to see Gareth Southgate completely switch it up, go back to a 4-3-3, get Sancho on, get all of our exciting players on, really put in a performance. But I just don't see it. I don't see it at all. So for me, yeah, the England double chance under 2.5 match goals, that was at minus 119, and it's dropped slightly. So money's coming in for that, and yeah, that was kind of my safe pick on this one, really, because I don't want to kind of get blinded by the fact that it's England and wanting us to do well. But yeah, so that was my angle on it.
Sounds interesting. Yeah, I mean, England have 0.5 goals per game so far in England games during this tournament. Obviously, just an average of 2 per game in Czech Republic games. Got that 2-0 win against Scotland, and then battled to a pretty impressive 1-1 draw, I thought, with Croatia last time out. So, as I said, they're a decent team. I guess a lot does depend upon the starting 11. You might want to have a little look at that when it comes out. Always published about an hour before the game, and if he has gone for a really attacking lineup, that could inspire you to make some different betting decisions. But as things stand, I just think England's greatest strength lies in attack, and Southgate doesn't trust the defence. So instead, he goes with 2 holding midfielders, urges both fullbacks to sit back, and we just play really negative defensive football when we're not unleashing our greatest strength. But there you go. I could rant about England.
Well, I was gonna say as well, I'm not sure if because I know Harry Maguire's been back training, maybe this is a chance for him to get some game time, potentially if he's back. That tightens things up. Him and Stones obviously been excellent for their clubs this season, and yeah, so I think that makes it tighter, and I think the defence would struggle against a team like that, a defence like that, but we'll see.
And what about, the likes of, so you talk about Maguire, who's a very big leader for Manchester United. I know that it's not his preferred position, but Jordan Henderson is the captain of Liverpool, and he knows the number 6. He knows how to play a deep lying midfield role. I don't mind him playing in that 6 at all, with Foden and Mount, right there in front of him. And I would put probably Grealish on the left wing, Kane striking, and then either Sterling and Sancho. And then, so it's Sterling, and then Sancho comes on at 45. And man, I wish that we were able to make those kind of decisions, because I think that they would be scoring a ton more goals right now if those were the case. Because, and you talk about Maguire, Henderson. Those are leaders. Those, just like Kane, you want to have those guys if you're going to have a chance to beat the likes of France, Germany, Portugal in the next round. I think you need those leaders on the pitch. Rice is still a little bit young. Phillips, it's just, I'm not sure about him. So I would go for a little bit more leadership. And, I think that the likes of Ben Chilwell was really missed out with, against Scotland, and even like Trent Alexander-Arnold. Having those wide players that really know how to whip crosses into the box against teams that sit back. That was an Arsenal versus Burnley match if I've ever seen it, Martin.
That's how I described it. Yeah. Well, I really thought the Spain versus Poland game was an Arsenal versus Burnley match. It was just all possession from Spain, passing sideways and backwards, and Poland loved it up and got an equaliser. So fair play to them. But no, brilliant. Thank you both for joining me today. Thank you once again for your picks and insight. Thanks everyone on the chat for all your wonderful Tips 2, quite a bit of hate for England, but that's fair enough after that limp performance against Scotland. Cost me money, cost a few people money, but plenty of time for us to make that back. Esteban, could you bring up the picks, please, and I'll read them out. We've only got 2 games, so won't take long. But George is going for Scotland and the draw double chance and under 3.5 goals in a same game parlay at plus 120. Against Croatia, England draw double chance and under 2.5 goals against the Czech Republic at odds of minus 119. Matt's just got both teams to score in that Croatia versus Scotland game at minus 107. He's going for England and under 4.5 goals at minus 125. And he's also got Kane to score anytime, plus 145. Big price. Sooner or later, Kane's got to start finding his shooting boots, hasn't he? Me, I'm just going for a outright moneyline win for Croatia at plus 138. Odds are dropping since Gilmore tested positive for COVID-19. So get on that sooner rather than later if you're tailing. And I'm also going, just like Matt, England and under 4.5 goals at minus 125. I don't think it's going to be a classic, but I can just see England getting the job done if they take it seriously and if Southgate puts out a halfway ambitious lineup. Okay, thanks very much for watching, everyone. We will be back tomorrow with another video previewing more of these games. So until then, goodbye, good luck, and tap that thumbs up button. Thank you.
Thanks, Martin.
Thank you very much.
Yes.